下載咗呢個遊戲幾日㗎啦，咁跟住就因為我對克蘇魯冇咩認識咧，同埋其實我唔係好中意玩恐怖遊戲啊，所以係冇事嘅。不過就真係見到。就真係見到幾多人討論呢個遊戲，可能因為免費嘅關係，你俾我搞掂埋手機上面啲嘢先。DLC 係買 DLC 嘅佢，唔知係咪 demo 嚟嘅咧呢部分，佢啲 DLC 都好貴啫。好似我係零認識嘅對客 solo， 佢有第二個遊戲嘅。Coming soon， 佢係一個舊嘅遊戲叫做 Ultimate Fishing Simulator， 2018年，都係做海嘅，幾得意啊！都係做海嘅。Alright， Faithful interactive content will not find difficult choices。真係類似 Walking Simulator。
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
係喐唔到嘅個人。我咪應該睇咗其他嘢先啦，頭先嗰個。
most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific, that the packet of which I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
1917年，What the hell？ 10萬封。基本上好似而家寫信寫到好似而家用 Facebook 咁樣。呢個應該算係個好嘅日本作品嚟嘅，佢咁樣介紹的話。
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
你俾我查下黑蘇魯啲歷史先。1928年，呢個作者係1890年至1937年。 始祖之一嚟嘅，啲恐怖小說始祖之一。Dagon 係邊年？Dagon 係1917年喎，好早喎，好早喎。
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
佢係有體弱多病嗰類型嚟。
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
Of the Hun.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
其實個 interaction 係好脆弱嘅呢個遊戲。我唔明佢 hidden 嗰部分喺邊。係咯，點解要提到 Huns 咧？你打緊德國。唔明。點解啊？點解啊？Before they have back to China， 係德國人發明嘅原來。All right。
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
呢個基本上係 interactive audio novel 其實唔係遊戲嚟嘅呢個。This is not a game。有咩？有冇嗰個符號喺度？我就睇唔到啦。隨便揾啲位撳下掣先，可能會撞到，因為我真係見唔到啊！繼續。
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
點解你會去咗？點解你會去咗南半球？理解唔到。我要揾咩網 ？Hello？我想 check 下嗰啲 achievement。 我走咗出去揾啲咩咧？唔記得咗，唔好意思啊。
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
點解你？佢喺大西洋，但係點解會走咗去南半球？6個 achievement 啊！呢個係下一步嚟。
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Huh? 太空喺下邊，理解唔到。向下望係宇宙嚟，有啲奇怪呢度。呢個海面同個宇宙個交界喺邊？咁樣變黑之後就變咗宇宙。
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
呢巨型魷魚嚟嘅，而家知道啦，而家知道海入面有巨型魷魚。
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain.
唔係海嚟嘅。
Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
因為海底嚟嘅。唔知喎，我梗係覺得，即係對未知嘅嘢嘅恐懼咧，即係你喺好多科學研究或者科學發現之後咧，咁就將啲未知變咗已知嘅嘢，咁就唔係覺得好恐怖。即係雖然你俾巨型魷魚襲擊，你都係會死；你俾老虎、俾熊襲擊都係會死。但係你知道係咩先咯？起碼。
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
幾有趣喎！佢咁現實嘅佢嘅解釋。厲害！
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Yeah, interactive audio novel 嚟嘅，其實都唔係 interactive 添，係冇乜 interaction。
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens.
個太陽係喐緊。有冇水啊你？冇水會死嘅。
As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
呢個 Dagon 係呢個 Dagon 已經係黑蘇魯個原型嚟㗎啦嘛？咁講喺度喐緊嘅成幾個鐘，應該死晒啦！如果真係生物嘅話。
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
行邊個方向都唔知喎，咁樣。
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
鬼嚟嘅呢啲，爪咩嘅呢啲，唔係海洋生物嚟嘅，我覺得。Oh my god， 鯨魚。
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
咁睇就唔係好遠，你個輪廓太清晰啦。你如果想表達好遠嘅話，要好朦先得嘅。The Horror of the Ocean。OK， 呢個係喺個科學發現之前嘅理論啦嚇。係好麻煩嘅，真係寫呢啲科幻故事咧，跟住搞到同幾廿年後嗰啲科學理論衝突咧，咁幾廿年後啲人係好難接受到嘅。即係對我哋嚟講已經係常識嚟㗎啦，海底勁多生物。其實水壓唔係問題，因為喺嗰個環境下，嗰個生物內部嘅壓力係啱啱抵消咗個水壓嘅，應該係冇陽光個問題比較嚴重啲，因為冇嗰啲能量可以生存到。通常係靠地熱啊嘛，應該海底，或者係靠洋流將啲生物衝到去海底。俾佢哋食嘅。Anglerfish。Fractooth。Viperfish 係咯，點解全部都係咁？咁全部都係咁鬼恐怖嘅海底嗰啲魚，全部啲牙都係咁，有冇人解釋下？Truly Lovecraftian characteristic. Yeah.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
點解要爬呢？有咩意義？有符號。
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world,
又可以咁深，但係冇海喺度。
peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
點啊？
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
你真係想落去？個故事要咁講，冇辦法啦。
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Yeah, hidden object game 嚟。應該冇嘢。
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
頭先望落去，仲以為係啲紐約嗰啲摩天大廈咁嘅。
For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The zenith shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith.
Cyclopean. Noting a type of ancient masonry made with massive irregular blocks. Cyclopean masonry is a type of stonework found in Mycenaean architecture. OK， 希臘嘅，佢用希臘嚟形容佢。
On whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain.
Okay.
It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Carvings, journals, and characters' notes. Islands emerging from the ocean. Fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies.
Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Okay.
Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Okay.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. It darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the marlin, about which it flung its gigantic spinning arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
hidden object 嘅，我好似冇嘢。我得兩個 achievement 啫喎。
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
係咯，我得兩個 achievement 啫喎，點算？
Distinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Amateur generalist. Defense of Dagon 啊 ？Defense 點解？ rebuked a series of criticism directed at his works.我覺得始終都係比較古典嘅呢種故事，始終就係後人啲作品係只會發展得更加好，即係呢啲始終係啲始祖作品嚟。呢個地方好似可以隱藏好多嘢，可以揾咗兩個符號。有幾多 achievement 先？而家有4個。Final Trivia 可能就比較難啲。
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Yeah, hidden object game. Philistines. Philigian. The Philistines were an ancient people who lived on the south coast of Canaan. Philistia. Religion. The deities worshipped in this area are Baal. 巴爾都係佢哋嘅。Alright. Mistakenly taken for a fish god. 咗先。 要玩嗰啲 hidden object， 喂呢個筆座，佢係咪仲係發緊惡夢咧？其實我唔信呢度冇隱藏符號咯。地下嗰啲符號計唔計？呢度會冇隱藏符號，咁鬼多地方收埋啲嘢。難以置信，不過真係揾唔到。
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
August Derleth. Devout Catholic.佢負責宣傳嘅。Copywriting skills for yourself. Curtis Woodwork. Or of building or permanent furnitures.即係如果佢講得好似個宣傳文章咁好嘅話，係 OK 嘅。如果佢真係做到，即係會俾人覺得係誇大嘅。喂，過分喎！你個視覺跳躍，你唔可以再向左邊望嘅，會跳翻轉頭，好鬼神奇。 我揾唔到第二個符號啊，就咁咯。佢嘅鐘都有咩意義？第二個符號咯。你嘅鐘都有咩用？The scientist 竟然係咁。Man of letters, man of science. Scientist 係咩語言個構成嚟嘅咧？加 IST 喺後面。Okay. Gender specific. Okay. Okay. 淨係為咗呢個符號而過嚟嘅，我係有冇其他符號？呢個石像都有啲可疑。我就真係見唔到第二個符號啦。好好地一個小説，整俾佢玩到 hidden object。咪煩，冇意義嘅 hidden object。
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Tobacco and alcohol. When he was 12? Okay.嗰陣係禁酒令，嗰陣係禁酒令個時期嚟啦，20年代係嘛？ 好似未揾晒啲嘢。
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
佢俾我移動個範圍好少啫，我覺得應該冇隱藏符號嘅。
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
係恐怖嘅。真係見唔到其他嘢。算，我就係好奇咁撳開個蠟燭一下，係睇唔到任何嘢嘅。真係漏咗唔少。有the sign 嚟嘅。
Hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
我要睇下攻略。Scene 1, Scene 2. Oh, okay. Return of Scene 7.
I hear a noise at the door.
要喺一開始去。
I am right. Penniless. Do not. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not complete. When I finally...
呢個係先，呢個係先。呢個係 Scene 6。
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimless.
要望落去先會出現嘅。2個先之後
But neither. The change, it's from. When at last, and the region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black. The sun was...
係佢本人嘅嘢嚟嘅啫。真係對我呢啲喺沿海城市生活食慣魚嘅人嚟講，真係冇乜可能驚魚。呢啲個人嘅恐懼好難傳達到俾人，我覺得。先聽。
As I crawled into the stranded through, nor were they.
喺邊啊？哦，呢度。吓 ？Tonga 喺邊 ？Tonga 喺邊 ？OK， 行咗成個澳洲嘅距離咯，基本上而家都黐線。應該係漏咗呢3個。咁係咪完㗎啦？係咪仲有一個嘅？OK。
So great was the
skip。去到嗰個石，去到嗰個石，去到個石像嗰度先。Skip。
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a
skip。
That night, without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. But I think my horror, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternity. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy.
佢要個動畫完咗佢先俾我，先俾我繼續去，先俾我講下一句嘢。
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to, but who it was
一定要轉埋佢先睇到。
plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size, though the creatures were shown disporting like grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Oh my god. Okay. Latest scientific discoveries. 正常嘅，好多科幻作家都係咁做。 update his story in the last moment. Unfortunately. Pew down man係咩嚟？喺最恐怖嗰個場景 save 咗，是但啦，試玩下嘅啫，成個遊戲都係。OK， 呢個就係黑魯蘇故事個簡短介紹啦嚇，當係。Alright。